Jacob dodged away and grabbed her dainty hand when Sophie tried to punch him. Surprisingly, Sophie had another strike waiting for him. She formed a fist with her other hand and aimed it at Jacob's stomach and punched him hard. She pulled her arm back and looked at Jacob fiercely. There was a knock at the door right at that moment, and both of them straightened themselves. "Come in," announced Sophie, and Drakon pushed open the door and entered. "How's the tutoring going?" he asked as he walked over to Jacob.
Jacob said as he rubbed his aching stomach. It's going pretty well, sir."
Sophie's face turned red as she didn't know what to say. "Sophie's English is very poor. We wanted to find her a tutor, but she wouldn't agree. That's why we had to ask you to help her study," Drakon said to Jacob.
"Yeah, she's working pretty hard," Jacob said.
Sophie looked at Jacob in surprise. She didn't think he would say something nice about her.
"My daughter here is very notorious. She's actually smart, but she just doesn't work hard," Dracon said as he patted Sophie's head.
"Daddy,"
Sophie said as she looked at her shoes in embarrassment. Drakon looked at Jacob and said, "How's your cultivation going? Did the spirit concentration scroll by Elder Liam work for you?"
"Nothing seems to be happening," Jacob replied.
"Take your time." He put his hand on Jacob's shoulder and said, "Come with me." He led Jacob to the attic on the top floor. Sophie was curious and followed them. This is Sophie's mother's studio at home, but she normally doesn't use it at night. After you finish tutoring Sophie, you can come here to cultivate, Dracon said. Jacob looked around. The studio was smaller than 10 square meters, but it was decorated elegantly and seemed cozy. It didn't feel small at all. Jacob noticed a triangular bookcase with all kinds of books about design. On the other side of the room, there was a flat table on which a variety of drawing equipment were kept for drafting. The chair was as green as spring grass, and it added an artistic ambiance to the tiny attic. Through the small window, one could view the backyard that was filled with vivid greens, and it looked very eye-pleasing. Dracon noticed Sophie pouting and asked, "What is it, darling?"
"Daddy, do you like Jacob more than me? I am not even allowed to enter this studio. Why is it that he can cultivate here?" Sophie said sourly.
"How about you do your homework here, and he gets to cultivate in your bedroom?" Dracon asked her.
"No way,"
said Sophie immediately. "That's right. Go do your homework now." Dracon meant business, and so Sophie left unwillingly. Dracon looked at Jacob and immediately began explaining the cultivation technique. There are actually 3 levels in the spirit concentration scroll. The first level is to communicate with heaven and earth, feel the energy in nature, and purify your body at the same time. The second level is to guide the energy into your body. This process is very slow, but it really helps strengthen your body. The third level is to release the energy around your body. You can only cultivate other more formal cultivation techniques after passing the third level. Jacob looked at Dracon as he listened to him carefully, trying to memorize what he was saying. He finally understood that Dracon wanted to guide him with the cultivation himself and wasn't leaving it up to Sophie. The first level of communicating with heaven and earth also has some techniques to it. Dracon faced Jacob and explained clearly and slowly. Jacob was touched because he thought Dracon took some time out of his busy schedule to explain these terms to him. However, if the elders saw that the Dragon King was himself explaining these basic terms to Jacob, they would find this incredibly shocking. However, Jacob was utterly oblivious to Dracon's identity, barring the fact that he was a king. Jacob had no idea what the duties and powers his role entailed and how revered and feared he was. Drakon's coaching was easy to understand, and Jacob learned a lot from him. Some things that he couldn't comprehend before became easier to understand. Sure enough, these kinds of things would be difficult for him to figure out all on his own.
Jacob understood that Sophie would encounter a considerable amount of danger over the next years, and within these years, he also had to undertake the same amount of danger to save her life.
Swallowing the internal core was a dangerous act. If he didn't follow through the Dragon Clan's cultivation technique to meditate and suppress the energy of the internal core, his body would explode sooner or later due to the growing power of the Dragon Core. Jacob now was more eager to cultivate than ever. According to Drakon, the Dragon Core innately contained the instinct of absorbing the heavenly and earthly spiritual energy. Therefore, it was also a supreme treasure of the world. A dragon's body was innately born with a dragon core. It is due to the core that the dragons become so strong and powerful. The time seemed to fly quickly as Jacob learned the cultivation technique with Drakon, and it was 9:30 in the evening. "Sir, I should go back now. Our dorm's curfew is 10 o'clock. Jacob noticed the clock ticking and said hastily, "All right. I still have half of the technique left to explain, but we can talk about it tomorrow." Drakon led Jacob out of the studio. "All right, I'll come see you tomorrow then," said Jacob. "I'll drive you back," Drakon said in an undisputable tone. Jacob wanted to refuse at first, but he nodded because he thought Drakon had more to say to him. Helen and Jacob had already established an amicable relationship, but it was about time that he get to know his father-in-law as well. They stepped out of the house and Drakon got out his black Chevrolet from the garage. Jacob got in the car silently. As the car engine started, he waited for Drakon to begin talking. However, Drakon focused on driving the car and didn't say anything. Jacob had many questions, but somehow he couldn't muster up the courage to ask him anything. Drakon drove Jacob to the entrance of the dorm by 9:45. Seeing Drakon being so familiar with the campus roads, Jacob suddenly remembered that his group of companies in the mortal world were the biggest investors in his university. His firm donated heavily and was responsible for building the stadium, the library, and the new media building. Jacob kept getting impressed every minute in Drakon's presence. "Come again at the same time tomorrow and tutor Sophie after dinner," Drakon said after he parked at the entrance of the dorm. "Okay, thank you, sir," Jacob said as he got out of the car. Drakon nodded and drove away. Jacob dragged his feet to his dorm. He was tired. As soon as he reached his floor, Sam and others surrounded him. "Hey man, since when do you get round-trip services in fancy cars? Are you dating a rich girl?" "I'm not dating anyone. I just finished tutoring someone and her dad drove me back." Jacob tried to stay as honest as he could. It's better to tell half the truth than to tell a whole lie, thought Jacob. "How come I never meet a rich girl? Not just rich, pretty, too. Rich girls are pretty anyhow." Sam seemed to be talking more to himself now. Jacob climbed up to his bed as Sam and the others babbled on about women. "Jacob's fortunes seem to be smiling down at him. A lot of women have been giving him attention this year. First, a cute girl comes to meet him on campus. Then the prettiest teacher in college, Susan, calls him to her office. And finally, the class president, Kathy, crushing on him." Jacob didn't want the conversation to continue, so he began pretending to read. But actually, he was just trying to adjust his state of mind. He was feeling enlightened after learning the cultivation technique and was eager to try it out. He began following Drakon's instructions and went deep into his concentration. He maintained the meditative state for a while and let the weak energy flow through the various acupoints in his body. The energy kept flowing from his head to toes and back till it finally reached the center of the body. The energy finally reached his abdomen, where his internal dragon core was situated. As soon as the energy hit the internal core, the core began to vibrate, and the vibration could be felt throughout his body. The vibrations flowed in a faster, easier way now, like the pathways were cleared for it to flow. Jacob felt an internal knock on his forehead, and his body's vibrations seemed to be taking in the external energy. He felt strengthened as the heavenly and earthly spiritual energy flowed inside him. It kept flowing for a few minutes and then stopped for a few seconds. The energy then began to get distributed to the hundreds of acupoints in his body. His whole body suddenly became light. He felt illuminated as the heavenly and earthly spiritual energy that was difficult for him to sense earlier was finally filling up his body. It felt as if his body became a transparent sieve. He couldn't keep the energy, but was also not an obstacle to it. It felt like he was rising higher and higher to an inextinguishable power. The feeling of clarity that came from this power was way more refreshing than swallowing 100 peppermints. Jacob tried to enjoy this refreshing experience. He didn't expect the breakthrough of the Spirit Concentration Scroll's first level would be this easy.
Please subscribe to the Pocket FM YouTube channel and press the bell icon for instant notification. Check out our channel for more such exciting shows.